Jen, how you walk us through the events of the last 24 hours? Last night, a senior administration official on a background call with reporters briefed them on the administration's response and said that Russia's occupied these regions since 2014, and that Russian troops moving into the Donbass would not itself be a new step, and didn't use the word invasion. This morning, the Deputy National Security Advisor said invasion. The president is using invasion. What changed in the last 24 hours? What did you see on the ground that changed the U.S. government's assessment of what is actually happening in these regions?
Sure. Well, I'm not going to, I know this isn't exactly what you're asking, but just to set the precedent here, I'm not going to be confirming military movements from the podium now or at any point, probably. But what I can tell you is what we looked at is the events of the last less than 24 hours, Zeke, right? And what we have seen is President Putin setting up a rationale to take more territory by force. What we're basing that on, including the comments of the Deputy National Security Advisor this morning and then the President's comments later in the afternoon, is a couple of things. One, Vladimir Putin announced yesterday that he was basically planning to carve out a chunk of Ukraine by recognizing 2 regions of Ukraine as independent. He brazenly asserted these regions are no longer part of Ukrainian sovereign territory. Last night, he authorized Russian forces to deploy into these regions. Today, he sought authorization from the Duma for the Russian military to use force outside of Russian territory. And today, he asserted that these regions actually extend deeper into Ukraine, claiming larger areas currently under jurisdiction of the Ukrainian government. So what we're seeing there, and as for anybody who read or paid attention to his lengthy speech last night, is the rationale to go much further. That is what we are also watching very closely. And for this combination of reasons, we see this as the beginning of a further invasion of Ukraine. But we look at and we assess over the course of a short period of time.
But right now, could you say whether or not the U.S. government believes that there's been additional deployments of Russian forces, active forces, across the border into Ukraine? They've been there for years, but additional forces?
I'm not going to get into military assessments of military movements from here.
And then on a separate topic, the president, and we've talked about this as well, warned Americans over the last several weeks that they should be prepared to bear the cost of standing up for Ukraine's sovereignty. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of conversation about this, and I was hoping you could maybe speak to clarify this a little bit. Why should Americans, feel that they have to? That is a cost that they should have to bear, and that should affect their lives. And how much should they be prepared for this, geopolitical crisis to impact their day-to-day living?
Well, I think what hopefully the American people who are tuning into this or have been tuning into this will see is that the President of the United States and his entire national security apparatus have been rallying the world and standing up against the efforts of Russia to invade and carve out a chunk of another country for their own. And that is, the world is standing with the United States against the actions of President Putin. Now, why does that matter? I realize that's what you're asking me. Why does that matter to the American people? That should matter because that is a fundamental value that we as a country stand up for, and we stand up against that type of action. That goes back to World War II, and we have repeatedly throughout history been leaders in the world in rallying support for any efforts to seize territory from another country. When the president spoke to the American people last week, it was very important to him to be very direct and clear and straightforward with them about what this could mean as we looked to what the impact of an invasion could mean and also what the impact of sanctions could mean. And the fact that standing up for values is not without cost, including in this case, including potentially in this scenario. Now, as Dileep just conveyed, what the president has said to his national security team is he wants to leave no stone unturned. He wants them to take every step possible to tap into the resources of global suppliers, to present to him any option that will reduce the impact on the American people. And even as he's looking at sanctions, he is taking that into account. But this is about standing up for American values and he wanted to make clear to them what impact that could have.